like low residence graduate programs, Montessori, and story to song, the idea that text can grow into music through collaboration, social systems. And the last thing that I'm fascinated with are music systems, so especially sustainable music systems. Now there's a fancy term for that, folk song. How do they last? What makes one endure? It's fascinating to me. My background is a privileged one. And yet, when I look at that background, and I think of the people who were also privileged with me, I have to ask a question. Because my dear friend Peter, same sort of background, he hanged himself. My cousin Lee, from whom I drew inspiration, she overdosed, intentionally. My mother drank herself to death. My dear friend Billy contracted AIDS. And I didn't. Somehow I sustained myself. Somehow, even though I experienced alienation, depression, lots of failure, somehow I didn't quit. And I emerged, starting from a timid person, into someone who had some trust in the universe. So how did that happen? The question I ask is, how did my inner world, the thoughts and feelings, interact with the outer world, my surrounding culture, to shape me into someone who has some enthusiasm for life, and also seems to have started up some sort of new method of composing. And I look at how I changed, and I say I changed in 3 ways. One is, I trust my mind now. I used to be terrified of my mind. When I went to Sunday school, as we all did then, I was taught about Joan of Arc and how she was told to lead the armies of France to overthrow the British. The voice of God came to her. For 9 years after that, every night, my prayer was, oh dear God, please don't speak to me. I'm not ready to lead the military. I had to learn to trust my mind. A second thing I had to learn was how to trust my body. Some people are born with natural senses of rhythm. I wasn't. For me, here's a beat, here's another beat, and an entire vast universe of something. I used to go to high school dances and watch the people moving up and down together. I'd say, how do they perceive it? I didn't perceive it. But through a series of creative steps, I responded to that distress and figured out how to keep the tempo. And the third way is, how did I learn to write music? How did that come to be? How did I learn to trust the universe, trust the world enough so that the world's ideas could come through me, and then I could shape them and help them out, and then offer them back? There's my research question. How does it happen? And how am I going to answer it? I had a committee member who said autoethnography. Now, you may nod your head and say, oh yes, autoethnography, we're very familiar with it. But I wasn't. And I studied and I read a lot of them, and I learned that it was a branch of anthropology. And so I had to look into anthropology. Now, you may know Pramod, and he actually did quite a few years of study of anthropology. But I'm going to put you on the fast track, and I'm going to explain anthropology. There are only 3 periods. The first period is when the colonialists went into the tribes and studied the tribes and said, this is what the tribes do, this is what they believe, this is what they think. That's the first period. Then that was over because a second period came when the tribe people said, no, wait a minute, we actually think we should have a voice in this. We have a feeling of how we live, and we want to have something that comes from within. No longer the without coming out, but from within and coming out. The third period, and that's the period I'm in now, is the autoethnographic period. I've given all of anthropology to autoethnography. Forgive me for that, but that's how I feel right now. What's fascinating about autoethnography is it's both the within person saying, here's what it looks like to me in my tribe. And it's also stepping out and saying, would you look at that culture? Would you look how it affects that individual? And there are some terrific autoethnographies about this. Two that I'll mention, they're both French. There was a man, Charles, and he lived in the western part of France, and a woman, Émile, and she lived in the eastern part of France. Both in little villages. Both grew up, educated in the little villages, then went to that center of France called Paris, got fancy degrees, and then went back to their villages. And they wrote autoethnographies about what it was like to live in a village, and then what it was like to look at the village after they came back. And what's so great is Charles said, we have something to preserve here in my village in the West. And Émile said, we've got to change this village, we've got to bring it up. Completely different reactions. But it shows the power of case studies. And all the autoethnographies I read, there wasn't one that pertained to me. There were some about growing up to be a musician in China, in Australia, but there wasn't one that said, how do you grow up to write songs? How do you grow up to become a bass player when you don't have a sense of rhythm? That wasn't there. There was no one telling my story. Through the autoethnography, I learned three things. First, I learned that I tend to make a creative response to a stressful situation. When I'm in distress, that's what seems to sustain me. So in terms of this microbiome, that's what he seems to do. He makes a creative response. The second thing I learned is that I changed as I came into the doctoral program. I had this picture of me as a PhD. And I could say, wow, I'm Dr. Brooks. I'm beautiful. I'm smooth. But through the autoethnographic process, I had to relive wounds, failures. And I found that reliving them didn't sort of put them to bed. They remained with me. And that instead of being what I thought I was going to be at the end of this program, instead, I was beautiful and smooth, but I was also Dr. Brooks, who was ugly and clumsy. And that was a major discovery for me. I would like to give you some highlights from the autoethnography. A picture of some of the creative responses. 9th grade, I'm out there in the circle in front of all the neighborhood houses in this nice suburb I live in, and the kids are playing kickball, and I'm playing kickball. I'm on third base, wanting to run home. You know, if somebody just kicks the ball, I'll get home, score. Jimmy Rubin, he's out there covering second. He's always running off the mound, criticizing the other players. Play a stop. Jimmy Rubin tells his story, tells his sister what she did wrong, tells the pitcher what he did wrong, on and on. I'm getting stressful, I'm getting tense, and a song occurs to me in my mind. And I sang that song, and then other children sang that song too, and it became a way that people would sort of correct in our little tribe, remind someone that they were overdoing it. And I'll sing that song for you. It went, Mr. Perfect in every way, what is it now that you have to say? Is it that everyone's wrong, or could it be you all along? That folk song had a certain longevity. The musical system definitely lasted through childhood. There's other ones that I've written that have lasted longer, and you know, they keep being recorded, and it's very gratifying. But something that I had to tackle too was my sense of rhythm. I didn't have it, and I had to figure out a way to get it. And I spent a lot of time studying other people, studying my own mind, finding ways to use my body. I learned to trust my body the whole day. Now, rather than going through all that with you, I'm just going to give you the answers. I'm going to give you a little training right now. I'm going to teach you how to tap your foot. Now, the first level foot tapping, get ready now. first level foot tapping is you're going to tap your foot down on a beat. It goes to the 1, 2, 3, 4. You're feeling pretty good, right? 2, 3, 4. Now remember, for me, there's a universe between each beat. So I don't know what to do in between the foot tapping. Eventually I figure out, oh my goodness, 1 and 2 and 3 and exactly halfway in between the beats, you lift up and it works. This is amazing. So you feel pretty good, right? Level 2. What happens when it's a swing rhythm? When it's a jazz piece? Oh my God. The beat is not split into nice even half, but into 3. There's the 1 of the beat, and there's a 2 and a 3, and then the second beat. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, if that's true, and you put your foot down on the beat 1, do you lift it up on 2? Or do you lift it up on 3? When do you lift up your foot? I studied. I'm like musicians. I was in a lot of bands and I watched their feet. And I can tell you the answer. You lift up on 3. Here's how it works. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's it. Pick it up a little faster. 1, 2, 3. You're lifting up on the 3, and we have a groove. Okay, so that ends the foot tapping session. Now, I'm going to move on to something else that's important to know. When you're in a rock band, there's a way to end a song. And it's that little extra something to do to say, I'm cool. I'm sensual. I know my body. And I couldn't do that with you. I had to study how to end it. And I'm going to demonstrate how you end a song. This is called the secret of a slide. First, an uncool ending. I'm going to end. All right? Song ending, right? Now, here's how to do it right. So it looks like nature now, right? But it wasn't. I saw them slide, and I'd go, meow, meow. And it didn't have that effect. Because it turns out you slide at a particular moment. You slide at 1, 2, 3, and. That's when you slide. And that's when it has the effect. I do not know why the Lord set it up so that on 3 and you slide. But I can tell you that that's one of the things I learned as I learned about working with my body. So I learned about working with my mind, Mr. Perfect in every way, that example. I learned about working with my body. Now I'd like to point out something about Mr. Perfect in every way. You remember the lyrics from Mr. Perfect in every way, what is it now you have to say? Could it be everyone's wrong, or could it be you all along? Yeah. But there's no verse. There's no line that's individual. There's no line like Marieke has about, it was like walking from the living room to the dining room. It's not there. I had to learn gradually to trust the world to give me ideas to shape, to mold songs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that because it involves AIDS. When I had initiated a project to become a regular person, and I became a banker, and I lived in San Francisco. And it seemed sort of silly, and it was sort of amazing that I did that. However, what was tragic was that my colleagues began to die. And I couldn't understand the world. It was just, very upsetting to me. And one colleague, Rob Upchurch, he said, Malcolm, my lover Jonathan is going to die. He's made a last request. His last request is that his ashes be taken to southern France. And Malcolm, since you speak French, I'd like you to go to the consulate and arrange for authorization to take his ashes. And I did so, and we arranged, and the ashes went over there. And it's not necessarily easy to take the ashes of a AIDS victim in France, but that all worked out. But I was left with an enormous heartbreak and something I understand. And my creative response was what happened, of course, and I wrote a song that I'm going to try to do for you now. Actually, I never sing it. There are other people who sing it, but I'm going to just do like one verse and one second verse, so you can see how the idea in the world came through me and became a song. It's not my own story. I can't leave this city. I can't leave my bed. Let my ashes go instead. These are the words I heard as my lover died. Ashes over Provence, ashes over Provence, spread my ashes over Provence. Climb above the vineyards, up some sunny hill. Let my ashes blow at will. And these are the words I heard as my lover died. Oh, ashes over Provence, ashes over Provence, spread my ashes